so themselves like the rest of us. All Things Considered is a production of NPR News, which is solely responsible for its content. Like a story you heard on this or another NPR program? Share it with a friend at npr.org. While there, you can also hear stories you missed, enjoy expanded content, or connect to your favorite member stations, wherever you are. Get the NPR app for your mobile device. You can also lean back and enjoy npr.org, optimized for the iPad. This is NPR. Thanks so much for tuning in to Atlanta's NPR News Station this Friday. I'm Ricky Bethington with 88.5 GPB Atlanta. A teacher in Indianapolis is challenging her colleagues to understand how race and poverty play out in their classrooms. We're going to hear more ahead in 15 minutes here on All Things Considered. Here in Georgia, a federal judge later this fall could finalize a Georgia manufacturer's $11 million settlement in a criminal case over salmonella-tainted peanut butter. Nearly a decade has passed since the salmonella outbreak that sickened 626 Americans was linked to peanut butter produced by ConAgra in southwest Georgia. Last year, federal prosecutors announced the company had agreed to plead guilty to a single misdemeanor charge of shipping adulterated food. Deal still requires the judge's approval. Meanwhile, the Georgia Public Service Commission is considering fines for contractors that keep damaging Metro Atlanta utilities. Violators could face a $10,000 fine per break. According to a press release from Public Service Commissioner Stan Wise, people have approached him concerning the safety and economic disruption from digging for Google Fiber and other underground services. The Atlanta Fire Department estimates Google Fiber contractors have broken around one water or gas line a day. Fulton County residents will decide this November whether to provide a tax exemption for goods stored in online shopping fulfillment centers. The supporter report says the Fulton Board of Commissioners approved a referendum for the November 8th ballot. It's aimed to lure job-creating warehouses. This comes after Governor Nathan Deal announced in June a 500-job Amazon fulfillment center is coming to Jackson County. I'm Ricky Bevington for GPB News. It's 5:30.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. Hillary and Bill Clinton paid federal taxes totaling $3.2 million in 2015, and now, almost 5 months after they signed it, their tax return has been released by the Clinton campaign. NPR's Peter Overy tells us the campaign is delivering transparency coupled with a hard shot at Republican Donald Trump.
Clinton's campaign made it clear the 2015 return was being released now because Trump steadfastly refuses to release his. Hillary and Bill Clinton had already disclosed previous returns, but now we know their income plummeted last year from nearly $28 million in 2014 to $10.6 million in 2015. Their federal tax rate last year was 34.2%. More than half their income came in Bill Clinton's speaking fees and consulting fees. He got $6 million from two controversial education companies, Laureate Education and the Dubai-based GEMS Education. Most of their unearned income was interest and dividends. Peter Overy, NPR News, Washington.
Donald Trump is acknowledging his presidential campaign faces challenges and could ultimately fall short. Trump says his lack of political correctness could cost him the election. Americans reject his blunt approach. Polls in some hotly contested states show Democrat Hillary Clinton's lead over Trump widening in recent days. Consumers pulled back on spending in July after 3 weeks of solid gains. As NPR's Chris Arnold tells us, most economists expected sales to go up slightly, but they were flat.
The month before was actually very strong, the retail sales we saw, so we're comparing this month to that month, so that's one thing that says, look, this isn't the end of the world. And also, some of the sluggishness was due to falling gasoline prices. That can make retail sales numbers go down, and of course, falling gasoline prices overall is a good thing for the economy and a good thing for people.
This is NPR.
Graham Moore's new novel is set time before electricity lit up the world.
I kept thinking as I was writing it, when was the last time any of us saw something truly new that we truly never seen before?
Graham Moore on his novel,
75 northbound, still a slowdown from an earlier four-vehicle accident off to the right side of the highway. This is 75 northbound in Cobb County at South Marion Parkway. In Henry County, still that slowdown from an earlier accident, 75 southbound at Hudson Bridge Road. Support for GPB comes from our generous members and the High Museum of Art. It's the final weeks of Walker Evans' Depth of Field at the High, featuring Evans' iconic photographs made in the South during the Great Depression. Only through September 11th, tickets at high.org. On August 23rd, I'm going to be broadcasting from the Flatiron Building in downtown Atlanta. That's where the city has a co-working space for entrepreneurs launching their own business. And we want you to tell us, what business do you dream of starting? Leave a voicemail, 888-685-2815. The question again, what business do you dream of starting? The number to call is 888-685-2815. I'm Ellen Barnhart, radio program director for GPB. It seems like there's breaking news almost every day. The presidential election, the war on terror, and other pressing national and international issues. Here in Maryland does a wonderful job of making sure you have the news you need as it's happening. To ensure you're up to date on your lunch break, 88.5 is moving here and now to noon Monday through Friday. And you can still hear the takeaway. It's moving to 2 p.m. 88.5 GPB Atlanta, Atlanta's NPR news station. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton released her taxes today. Why do we care about politicians' taxes? There are a couple of reasons up now on my Twitter feed at Ricky Bevington. It's 5:35. Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations. And from CarMax, a nationwide retailer of used vehicles, where people can buy or sell their car, offering written vehicle appraisals good for 7 days. Learn more at CarMax.com. CarMax, drive what's possible. And from Paramount Pictures, Pathé, and BBC Films, presenting Florence Foster Jenkins, based on a true story starring Meryl Streep, Hugh Grant, about how Florence brought everyone to their feet when America was down on its luck. Now playing. It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Audie Cornish. The sexual harassment scandal that cost Fox News chairman Roger Ailes his job is expanding. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the number of women who have said they were sexually harassed by Ailes is now in double digits, and the repercussions continue. Today, Fox announced its chief financial officer is leaving. NPR's David Folkenflik has been covering the story. He's learned a lot about how Fox News operates. And first, David, how many more women have stepped forward? What are we hearing in the way of new allegations?
Well, apparently the review has talked to more than 20 women. It's not 100% clear how many of them are explicitly making accusations about Ailes or about the general culture of sexual harassment, sexism at Fox News. The Wall Street Journal, of course, is controlled by the Murdoch family, as is Fox News. Be considered a reliable source about that. But, among the people who have stepped forward of late is Andrea Tantaros. She's a very prominent host of The Five, a popular late afternoon show. She has now publicly accused Roger Ailes of sexually harassing her. Lawyers and officials at Fox News have said on background that they've looked into allegations she made against other men, but that she had never previously brought forward any allegations against Ailes, who I might add has denied all of the many mounting allegations against him.
I want to talk more about the reaction from Fox, as we mentioned, the change in leadership positions today with the CFO leaving, and there were reports that 20% was preparing for settlement. So what do you know?
Well, I'm told that the parent company, 21st Century Fox, is girding significant tabs to some of the women who have made these allegations and accusations
there are many reasons why people don't speak up. And in your reporting, you said that this was particularly difficult at Fox. How come?
Well, Roger Ailes came from the world of politics and really broke in politics in the campaigns of Richard Nixon. And he was a guy who ran essentially certain kinds of dirty tricks. At Fox News, we've learned in recent weeks that they essentially plotted against their critics. They figured out ways to try to discredit them, to send, at times, perhaps private investigators to learn more about them. And if you want to think about why a woman wouldn't come forward to accuse Roger Ailes of things, Lori Dew was an anchor for Fox News, and she once publicly in the elevator criticized the head of publicity for not getting her enough press. And he managed to ensure that leaked from Fox News were unflattering photographs of her and planted the idea in the Washington Post gossip column that she had been drunk publicly. Privately and secretly, Lori Dew, something they knew, she was an alcoholic. Now, she turns out to be somebody who has claims of her own to make about Roger Ailes, according to her lawyer. She's keeping it for a book. But if you think that somebody's going to be punished and embarrassed publicly for something they said about how much publicity they were saying, imagine how much punishment they might face if they were to make accusations of sexual harassment against the CEO and chairman.
What does all this tell us about how Ailes ran things, and really about the culture at Fox, how it operated as a result?
Well, when you think of a news organization, you think of there being separations between personal agendas and what you see on the air, or separation between corporate agendas and what you see on the air. The revelations of recent weeks have shown that Roger Ailes really ran Fox News as though it was purely a political shop. You repay your allies and you punish those who criticize you.
That's NPR's media correspondent, David Wilson. David, thank you. After 13 years as a New York Yankee, Alex Rodriguez will play his last game in pinstripes tonight. Reporter Jim O'Grady of member station WNYC recounts the ups and downs of the player's career, which has been nothing less than sporadic.
Not just athletic, this guy is about narrative. You could say the career of Alex Rodriguez begins on a mountaintop, like the high peak in Ride of the Valkyries. In 1993, he's the #1 pick in the Major League Baseball draft. A year later, at age 18, he's in the big leagues. Could be the youngest player ever to hit 500 home runs. Younger than Babe Ruth, younger than Hank Aaron. In 2000, A-Rod leads the Seattle Mariners to sign with the Texas Rangers for $252 million. It's the richest contract in baseball history. Those are rhyme names singing about gold. So much gold. Now it's 2008, and A-Rod is with the Yankees in tabloid pen. And speaking of maidens, he's linked to Madonna and reveling in his status as an A-list celebrity. He ruled baseball as the 5-time home run king and 3-time most valuable player. In Wagnerian terms, he has achieved the Ring of Power. But this is opera, so the ring is cursed. A-Rod's wife files for divorce, though the seeds of his destruction had begun germinating the year before when he took questions from Katie Couric for 60 Minutes.
Have you ever used steroids, human growth hormone, or any other performance-enhancing substance?
No.
Wrong answer, Alex. Not only had he done steroids, he had tested positive for them years before. Major League Baseball tested its players confidentially to find out how many were using drugs to cheat. When that long list of names was leaked, A-Rod caught most of the flack.
In an exclusive interview with ESPN, Alex Rodriguez answered allegations he tested positive for steroids.
I was young, I was stupid, I was naive.
But at the time, there's no rule against steroids, so he's free to help vanquish the Phillies and win the World Series in 2009. Yankees win! Now the protagonist has an actual record, but his flaws remain. A-Rod is caught doping again. This time, baseball uses a new rule to slap him with a record suspension. He unleashes an army of lawyers to contest it, but loses arbitration and must sit out the following season. Today, he leaves with a whimper, a shadow of his former self, his bat a broken sword. Alex Rodriguez is one of the greatest players in the history of baseball, but he's fallen from the mountaintop and knows it.
I'm upset about the mistakes and disappointed, but I'm even more disappointed that I acted like an ass. That whole lawsuit was painful.
At least A-Rod at 41 is no longer using youth as an excuse, and maybe that counts as a glimmer of wisdom. For NPR News, I'm Jim O'Grady in New York.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR. To be labeled gifted than their white classmates and more likely to be suspended. An elementary school teacher in Indiana is trying to break that cycle by getting her colleagues to talk openly about race and discrimination. Peter Balanon-Rosen of Indiana Public Broadcasting has the story.
Suspension for many black students can be for things like disrespect, non-compliance, situations that require a judgment call. And that's important because what happens if a teacher's attitude towards race clouds that judgment?
Just fill in wherever.
That's Ayanna Coles. She's a teacher here at Eagle Creek Elementary in Indianapolis. In her room, after school, it's hot and the fans are on.
Are you just sitting around here, Ayanna, or anywhere?
Coles is black and one of just 4 teachers of color at the school. Throughout last year, she gathered coworkers in her classroom for open discussions on race.
We are going to experience discomfort. We may or may not experience it, but if we have it, it's okay.
Revolt, talking, race, and biases that teachers could unconsciously bring to class. Cole says her son's schools have left him behind, that he's been suspended for minor reasons, that his teachers have never really connected with him. She wants teachers here to do better. Each meeting hits a different topic.
We talked about unquestioned assumptions, like some parents or groups of people have no value of education, or their parents are uneducated.
This isn't a formal program. The 20 teachers gathered, including speech pathologist Dorothy Gare, are here on their own time. She's the only other black teacher in the room.
I actually had someone ask me, why don't black people speak right? And it threw me.
Cole steers the group toward a discussion about Ebonics. When students use it, she says, it can trigger biases from teachers. Who's smart? Who's not?
But I can remember being younger, and if I used standard English, I felt like I was acting white. And so I was opposed to it because I wanted to embrace my culture and heritage. So
Cole says understanding cultural differences and privilege might get teachers to acknowledge and address their own biases.
I'm going to stop at a moment and let people, you want to talk? Yeah, go ahead.
Jason Coons, who teaches music, tells the group that in a school where most students are students of color, he feels some don't trust him as a white teacher.
At the end of the day, I'm just frustrated with the fact that I don't feel like I can do anything about it.
I think that I don't really believe about it. I absolutely talk to my trust white people. Until I have to talk to my I get it.
These sessions can get raw, but Jason Coons, who grew up in Alabama, says he's looking at things a little differently.
Like, what I think is misbehavior, okay, is this really actually something that needs to be addressed, or is this just because it's so different from what I grew up with that I view this as offensive?
He says he's still learning.
I mean, I'm thinking about the kids, but I mean, I'm still growing as a person quite a bit too, so.
And Ayanna Coles says she's helping her students break the silence on these tough topics too. So I ask her, which group is it easier to have these conversations with?
Kids, because they're honest. They like, this is what I think, so this is what I'm going to say. Absolutely kids.
Kids, like 9-year-old Lene Good. She says Coles, her teacher, helped her think a lot about the role both power and perspective have in the world.
Like, if you look at the world and you see negativity, you can be an advocate and say something about it.
For NPR News, I'm Peter Balanon-Rosen.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Sometimes inspiration comes when you least expect it.
We were out on vacation and we decided to walk into a Dairy Queen just to get some soft serve. And we walked in and we're like, no one does chef flavors, chef-driven soft serve.
I'm Kai Rizal Eureka on soft serve ice cream next time on Marketplace.
It all starts in 10 minutes. It's 6 o'clock here on 88.5 GPB Atlanta. A very good Friday to you. I'm Ricky Bevington checking the traffic right now. Still a slowdown 75 ramp northbound at North Marietta Parkway. Looks like a left exit lane currently blocked. 85 southbound at Snowy Road. I see a backup there. There's a left lane blocked by an accident. And in Henry County, still that slowdown plus 3 vehicle accident in the left lane, 75 southbound at Hudson Ridge Road. Expect a chance of showers and thunderstorms overnight and through the weekend, but it's looking like a nice weekend. Tomorrow mostly sunny, high near 90. Mostly sunny on Sunday, high near 91 degrees. There is a chance of afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms on Sunday.
Now is the perfect time to clean out the garage and get rid of that car you no longer need. So face the coming months with a fresh start, and by donating your used car to GPB, you'll even get a tax deduction. Call 877-GPB-1-CAR or donate securely.
And 100 of them were forced to evacuate when the oil train derailed. 3 points south, the town's deep in the Columbia River Gorge, canyon with steep cliffs where winds could reach 40 miles per hour during the summer.
If the wind had been as it is today or more, we would have had a fire going up more than 4 of those cars all the way through town and wiping out our town.
Union Pacific was to blame for the derailment that caused the oil spill, according to a preliminary report by the Federal Railroad Administration. It says Union Pacific didn't maintain its tracks properly. However, an inspector certified by that same federal agency checked the tracks and gave it a more than a month before the derailment.
It was unfortunate for the community.
Jerry Oliver is a port commissioner in Vancouver, Washington, and a vocal supporter of what would be the largest oil-by-rail terminal in the country, known as the Vancouver Energy Project.
It's also unfortunate because it gives a tremendous black eye to anything related to fossil fuels.
If built, the terminal would more than double the number of mile-long oil trains traveling along the Columbia River to about 46 trains per week. Serena Larkin is with the Sightline Institute, a Seattle-based think tank that opposes the oil terminal. He says until Mosier, oil train derailments were the kind of thing to happen somewhere else.
Mosier proved that we're not any different. We are just as vulnerable. We are facing the exact same risks from oil trains that everyone else in North America is facing right now.
Despite low oil prices, proponents of the project say the terminal is needed to reduce foreign imports and move domestic oil. For now, it's relying on oil trains because there aren't enough pipelines to move oil from North Dakota to the West Coast. Larkin says Mosier's a turning point in the debate surrounding the Vancouver oil terminal and one that will weigh heavily on whether the project is permanent.
It showed what the Vancouver oil terminal is really asking Northwest communities to shoulder in risk.
I strongly believe that all accidents are preventable.
Dan Riley is Vice President of Government Affairs for Tesoro, an oil company behind the project. Since the derailment in Mosier, he says there has been more scrutiny.
I think that the criticism is not of the project, but of the rail system.
Riley says Tesoro has also pledged to only allow tank cars with thicker shells and other safety features designed to withstand a derailment into the Vancouver facility. But that's done little to ease the safety concerns of firefighters and environmental groups. Ultimately, Washington Governor Jay Inslee has the final say on whether the project gets approved. That decision could come later this year. Inslee's acknowledged the risk oil trains pose, says the Mosier derailment is among the things he'll consider when determining whether or not he'll permit the oil train. For NPR News, I'm Conrad Wilson in Vancouver, Washington.
The U.S. women gymnasts have been dazzling all week, and the team has nicknamed themselves the Final Five, in tribute to their fierce leader, Marta Karolyi. She's stepping down after the Rio Games. Karolyi and her husband Bella have been towering figures in the world of gymnastics. She thinks coaching generations of U.S. gymnasts. To talk about Marta Karolyi, State writer Deborah Myers. She's author of the book 10 of the Perfect 10. Welcome to the program. Thanks for having me. Marta Karolyi is officially the national team coordinator for U.S. gymnastics, but it seems that she has a lot more power and influence than that. Can you kind of describe her role in the sport today?
Well, officially, she runs the national team training camps, where once a month all the top gymnasts in the United States come and they're trained and observed. And she gives out these international assignments. Now, technically, there are two other people on the committee that decide to make these teams, but I think most people recognize that Marta's voice is the loudest in the room and the most important. Like, the team that she really wants is generally the one that gets selected. But she's also, I mean, the girls really respect her, and the girls really want to please her. Deep down, making Marta happy is what a lot of these girls are after.
Now, Marta was born in Romania. As people know, she was married to fellow coach Bella Karolyi. Now, tell us about the system that they developed in Romania, what they essentially exported here to the U.S.
So the system that they developed in Romania, they were given permission to create an experimental school in Onești in the Carpathian Mountains, which is where actually Nadia Comaneci was from, so just really lucky. But anyway, they created a centralized model where the gymnasts were trained a lot without distractions and where the real priority was on sports and all the other things were kind of secondary.
And, of course, they have a ranch in Texas, which has become something of a mecca for elite gymnasts, right?
Yes, so now we have this semi-centralized training system where once a month the members of the national team and other gymnasts who receive invitations and their coaches go down to Texas for 5 days and train with the national team.